As the black of the night stretched across the Los Angeles sky like a velvet curtain, every step Lady Gaga took from her limousine toward the historic mansion in Beverly Hills echoed with purpose. The red high heels on her feet struck the cobblestones like a manifesto. Each step brought her closer to a reckoning with the past. Tonight was meant to be a glamorous wedding night, but no one knew that the real performance of the evening would be life itself. Gaga, her face emotionless, gloved hands steady, carried an unshakable resolve in her heart. When the mansion door opened with a golden knocker, the flood of light inside seemed to swallow her whole. Everyone turned to look at her, even the bride. With her hands at her sides, she glided slowly inside. People recognized her but couldn't comprehend why she was there. The wedding was for one of Hollywood's biggest producers, Alexander Royce, and a young actress, Seraphine Monroe. Alexander had once touched Gaga's career, but had abandoned her at her darkest hour. And tonight, Lady Gaga had come to collect the dues of the past. As violins played Mozart in the hall, Gaga made her way toward the dance floor, her steps heavy. The room fell silent. When the music stopped, only Gaga's voice remained. "Alexander," she said, her voice bearing the weight of the past. "This wedding marks the beginning of everything you thought was over." The bride opened her eyes in shock. Gaga pulled a small black envelope from her pocket and dropped it at Alexander's feet. Inside was a 2012 audio recording. In that recording, Alexander described how he had manipulated Gaga, left her alone, and conspired with other producers to destroy her career. An icy silence filled the wedding hall. As the recording played, every word hung in the air like a bullet. Seraphine's face went pale. The guests averted their eyes. Alexander looked only at Gaga. There was no anger in his gaze, just the acceptance of a long-awaited end. Gaga didn't back down. "I didn't come here to lose someone tonight. I came to reclaim myself," she said. "And this will be the final performance in your life, Alexander." At that moment, the security team tried to intervene, but Lady Gaga was already heading for the exit. The silence she left behind was as deep as years of vengeance. That night, the wedding was canceled. The media exploded. The next day, the headlines read, "Lady Gaga's live revenge performance." But this was just the beginning. Alexander lost all his connections in one night. Film companies, studios, sponsors. Everyone pulled back, because now everyone knew what he really was. That recording wasn't just Gaga's reckoning, it became the voice of many artists who had remained silent for years. As days passed, other names began to speak up. The reality rebellion, started by Lady Gaga, became one of the loudest echoes in Hollywood. But Gaga had vanished. She disappeared from social media, gave no interviews, made no statements. 6 months later, a museum quietly opened in Paris. A new art house, La Voix Silencieuse, the silent voice. This museum showcased only the works of forgotten female artists. The founder, Lady Gaga. On the opening night, major figures from the art world attended, but Gaga was nowhere to be seen. Only a quote hung on the wall in a black frame. "I am no longer on stage. Because the real performance begins when I step off it," people whispered. She had become a legend. Everyone believed she lived in Paris, but no one was sure. Until a year later, when a theater performance opened in New York. Its name, The Mirror Room. In this experimental theater, each audience member was taken into a room alone, faced with a mirror. From within each room echoed only one sentence: "Do not forgive those who made you forget who you are." The creator behind this performance was kept secret, but many art critics, reading between the lines, whispered her name, Lady Gaga. She was no longer just an icon, but a movement, not a dream, but a living manifesto. This transformation, coupled with Alexander's downfall, sparked a change in public consciousness. People became more aware, more alert. Those in power realized they could be held accountable. Gaga's silence itself became a rebellion. But the real turning point came years later. One day, a young girl in Los Angeles wrote a play for her school project. Its title, Gaga's Night. This girl had found inspiration in the art house Gaga had created and courage in her fight. The play went viral. The girl was only 16, but her writings echoed Gaga's words. The press began calling her the new Gaga. One day the girl was invited to the museum in Paris. At midnight, a door opened just for her. When she entered, a single figure waited for her in the dim light. Lady Gaga. Gaga had aged, but her eyes were still the same. She looked at the young girl, held her hand, and said only, "It's your turn." The girl began to cry at that moment, because she realized this was a passing of the torch. Gaga no longer needed to be seen. Her presence had already reflected into other lives. The voice of true power was now resonating in others. Lady Gaga never left the museum again, but her name lived on, in the streets, in the art, in songs, and in hearts. She was not just a star, but the director, writer, and actress of her own life, and most importantly, a rebellion that belonged to no one,